Okay, this is finally part 3 of the Dingoo A320 review. This time we're going to cover the Linux operating system. As we went over earlier, there's multiple categories, including your standard games ported over from Linux category, your games ported from PC category, your emulators, your media player, volume control, brightness control, and overclocking control. I'm just going to cover one little game on the Linux port. It's an old one that some of us have all played. It's called Tyrian. It's a really, really good, fast-paced overhead shooter. Runs very well on the Dingoo. Let's hurry up and load up the level real quick. As you can see, it's scrolling smoothly, graphics are really responsive. Overall, it works out great. Go ahead and back out of that. Then there's the standard Doom, and now a recent addition, Quake, has also been added on. This is one of the apps that show off the 3D applications of the Dingoo. It's a little choppy, very playable, and please consider this is an alpha release of the version of Quake. You can speed it up a bit by going into your options, taking your screen size down a little bit, and going back into it. As you can see, it's moving quite a bit smoother now. And of course, there's Doom. I've got close to 60 WAD files. Many versions of Doom are supported under a program called Dingoo. Let's check out the emulators. Probably the biggest killer app for the Dingoo is MAME for All. It does take a little bit of time to load. We're going to go straight up off the bat with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Set the volume to max down there. You can enable cheats down here. Change your audio and CPU clock speeds, your sound quality, set your frame skip, aspect ratios, and the Dingoo clock speed. I usually recommend overclocking to 420 megahertz. Also keep in mind that this is only MAME for All version 1.1. They're expecting speed to increase in subsequent releases. And of course, winners don't use drugs, they just use steroids. Here we have the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles opening. Start and select at the same time, puts your quarter in. And you can change which controller you use in the settings menu. There's a shortcut to get to it, which will be in your MAME for All documentation. As you can tell, the audio sounds fantastic. Now we get into the gameplay. There is a little bit of slowdown. Still very playable. The music still sounds fine. I'd say it's probably running at between 90 to 95% speed. Overall, very playable. Keep in mind, I wouldn't go past games newer than this until some newer releases of MAME for All come out. They're still working on optimizing for the Dingoo, and they're working with a 400 MHz processor that can be overclocked to about 430 and 32 megs of RAM. Overall, though, it works out very well. Going into some of the other emulators, the weakest emulator, in my opinion, on the standard firmware is the Super Nintendo emulator. A lot of that is fixed, though, with the Super Nintendo emulator for the Dingux. Let's roam into our ROMs folder, scroll down to the Super Nintendo ROMs. If you have a lot of ROMs, I highly recommend organizing them in categories or by letter, because the menu system does take a while to scroll through the ROMs. There's no way to move through the ROMs faster. Believe me, I wish there was. Hopefully it'll be implemented in a newer version, but keep in mind the system's only been out for a couple months or so, so for what we have right now, they've made significant improvement. Let's look for something halfway interesting to load real quick. By the way, Super FX chip games so far are either extremely slow or do not load at all. So for the time being, you're stuck with your standard Super Nintendo games. Let's try Mario World. Always just your standard classic. Selecting B brings up a menu. You can boost your volume control. Go back in. As you tell, it's actually moving at full speed in this version of the emulator compared to the official firmware, where I didn't even bother making a review for the Super Nintendo emulator because it's really rather poor. And here, runs great. Full speed, sounds great. This is everything that we could have wished for in the original firmware version of this simulator, but still, overall it works out great in my opinion. Then we'll also have emulators for the Atari ST, the MSX, the Sinclair Spectrum, Pico Drive, which not only handles your Genesis files, but also has support for some Sega CD games now. I don't have any for y'all to try out right now. Maybe we'll see them in the bonus video. And your stock media player, once again your volume control, brightness. So overall, Dingux is a very quickly expanding different firmware for your Dingoo that eventually I feel everyone will probably end up switching to. For the short time that it's been out, it's made amazing progress. As of today was actually the release for Quake for the Dingux firmware. And as I said, with the addition of your with the addition of your Doom games, Duke Nukem 3D, a fully functional Super Nintendo emulator, standard regular Nintendo emulator, Scum VM, I feel that the future of the Dingoo will probably be the Dingux firmware. Well, that's it for part 3. Stay tuned. There may be another bonus video or update going on later on, because they're always updating Dingux. I've seen as many as 2 updates in a single day. So stay tuned, and if you order, be sure to check out the new bonus video detailing one of, in my opinion, one of the best sites to order from, DingooDigitalUSA.com. Enjoy!